The sleek, silver spacecraft descended through Earth's atmosphere, its hull shimmering with energy fields that dispersed heat and friction. It was the first official delegation from the Galactic Council, an alliance of 17 spacefaring civilizations that had been observing humanity for decades. Their arrival in 2187 marked the end of humanity's cosmic isolation. Admiral James Walker stood at attention on the landing pad, his weathered face betraying no emotion as the craft settled on the ground with barely a whisper. Behind him, a line of Earth's military leaders represented every major power. They had agreed that Walker, with his calm demeanor and strategic mind, would be humanity's military representative. The ship's ramp extended, revealing 3 alien figures. The central figure, tall and willowy with iridescent skin, stepped forward. "I am High Counselor Rix of the Galactic Council," it said through a translation device. "We come to formally invite Earth to join our alliance as a probationary member." Walker stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Admiral James Walker of Earth's United Defense Force. We are honored." Over the next week, the aliens toured Earth's major cities and facilities. The Council delegation seemed impressed by human art, culture, and scientific achievements, nodding their elongated heads approvingly at museums and universities. The tone changed when they visited military installations. At the North American Defense Complex, Walker guided the aliens through displays of Earth's military technology. High Counselor Rix examined a standard-issue rifle held by a Marine guard. "You still use physical projectiles?" Rix asked, mandibles clicking in what the humans now recognized as amusement. "We find them reliable," Walker replied evenly. The military advisor of the delegation, a stocky 4-armed being named Dorn, picked up the weapon with 2 of his hands. His exoskeleton gleamed under the facility lights. "Primitive," Dorn said, setting the rifle down. "Energy weapons have been the standard for Council races for over 8,000 years." Dorn activated a holographic display showing sleek alien weapons that fired beams of concentrated energy. "These can adjust output, have no recoil, and require no physical ammunition." Walker nodded politely. "Impressive technology." "Your kinetic weapons would be useless against modern shields," Dorn continued, gesturing to a personal shield generator on his belt. "Even your most powerful ballistic rounds would be stopped instantly." The third alien, a diplomatic officer named Trell, touched Dorn's arm gently. "Remember our purpose here, military advisor." But Dorn continued, moving to examine a heavy machine gun mounted on a vehicle. "This design has hardly changed in centuries. How do you expect to defend yourselves with such outdated technology?" Walker's second-in-command, Captain Rodriguez, shifted uncomfortably, but Walker remained calm. "We adapt as needed," he said simply. The aliens exchanged glances that clearly conveyed their doubt. Later that evening, at a formal reception, Walker overheard Dorn speaking to other council members. "Their military capability is at least 3 centuries behind the council standard. Physical projectiles. They might as well be using spears." Laughter rippled through the group of aliens. Walker sipped his drink, his face revealing nothing. 2 days later, the council delegation prepared to depart. High Counselor Rix presented Earth's leadership with official probationary membership documents. "We welcome Earth to the galactic community," Rix announced. "Your representatives will be granted observer status on the council, with limited voting rights." Walker noted the terms were far less favorable than those granted to other recent additions to the council. As the alien ship lifted off, President Chen turned to Walker. "They don't think much of our military capabilities." Walker watched the ship disappear into the clouds. "No, Madam President, they don't." "Will that be a problem?" she asked. Walker's lips curved into a slight smile. "Not for us." The president raised an eyebrow questioningly. "They've made assumptions based on appearance rather than function," Walker explained. "In my experience, that's always a tactical error." As Earth prepared to send its first delegation to the council headquarters, Walker personally selected the security detail. Their orders were simple: packed the primitive weapons. The human delegation ship docked at Nexus Prime, the massive space station serving as headquarters for the Galactic Council. The structure was a marvel of engineering, a gleaming wheel-shaped construction, with 17 spokes representing each founding species. Earth, as a probationary member, had no spoke of its own. Ambassador Thomas Reed led the human contingent down the boarding ramp. His gray suit was impeccably tailored, contrasting with the colorful, flowing garments of the aliens waiting to greet them. Behind Reed walked 6 Marines in formal uniforms, their posture rigid, eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," said Trell, the diplomatic officer who had visited Earth. "Your quarters are prepared in the outer ring, and the Council will hear your formal introduction tomorrow." Reed nodded politely. "We look forward to it." The humans were escorted through wide corridors filled with beings of all shapes and sizes. Some floated rather than walked, others moved on multiple legs or tentacles. The Marines kept their expressions neutral despite the extraordinary sights. That evening, Reed reviewed his presentation while the Marines unpacked equipment cases. Lieutenant Parker opened a secure container, revealing neatly arranged pistols and compact rifles. "Standard loadout, sir," Parker reported to Reed. "Kinetic dampeners installed as instructed." Reed glanced at the weapons. "Keep them secured until needed. Remember, we're guests here." The next morning, the human delegation entered the Grand Chamber, a vast circular room with tiered seating for hundreds of representatives. High Counselor Rix presided from an elevated platform. "The Council recognizes the delegation from Earth," Rix announced. "Ambassador Reed, you may present your world's capabilities and contributions." Reed walked to the central podium. Behind him, 2 Marines wheeled in a display case. "Esteemed Council members," Reed began, "Earth brings millennia of cultural diversity, scientific innovation, and unique perspectives to this alliance." For 30 minutes, Reed outlined human achievements in medicine, art, science, and environmental restoration. The Council members watched with polite interest. Finally, Reed said, "I would like to address military capabilities, as all Council members contribute to collective defense." The chamber grew quieter as Reed motioned to the Marines. They opened the display case, revealing a selection of human firearms, from handguns to a disassembled sniper rifle. "These are examples of our standard defensive weapons," Reed explained. Military Advisor Dorn leaned forward in his seat. "Ambassador, we have already examined these primitive devices during our visit to Earth." "Indeed," Reed acknowledged. "But I believe their capabilities were not fully understood." A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. One council member, a gelatinous being from a water world, wobbled in what appeared to be laughter. Dorn stood, his 4 arms gesturing dismissively. "Ambassador, perhaps I should explain. Council species abandoned projectile weapons 8 millennia ago, when energy shield technology rendered them obsolete." He activated a holographic display showing energy weapons and shield generators. "These defenses can stop any physical projectile. The energy required to propel a physical object fast enough to penetrate our shields would tear the weapon apart." Reed smiled. "That would indeed be a problem." Furthermore, Dorn continued, warming to his subject, "Energy weapons can be calibrated for stun or lethal settings, require no physical ammunition, and function in any environment." Several council members nodded in agreement. The gelatinous being wobbled again. Dorn pointed to the human weapons. "Your projectile weapons are loud, inefficient, and require constant resupply of ammunition. In modern galactic combat, they are museum pieces, not practical weapons." Reed waited for the translator to finish, then replied calmly, "We find them reliable in certain circumstances." "What circumstances?" asked a reptilian council member, scales shimmering with amusement. "When facing opponents from 8,000 years ago." Laughter echoed through the chamber. Reed's expression remained pleasant. "Sometimes old solutions address problems new technology creates." "A charming sentiment," Dorn said, "but hardly relevant to modern defense." As Reed concluded his presentation, He noticed the human Marines exchanging subtle glances. They had been well briefed on Council attitudes toward human weapons. Later, as the delegation returned to their quarters, Lieutenant Parker whispered to Reed, "They really don't get it, do they?" Reed shook his head slightly. "No, and let's hope they won't need to." The transport vessel Celestial Harmony glided through hyperspace, carrying the human delegation back from their first official council meeting. Ambassador Reed sat in his private cabin reviewing notes, while Admiral Walker joined the Marines in the ship's small mess hall. "At least the food's decent," Lieutenant Parker said, sampling an alien fruit that tasted surprisingly like apples. Walker nodded. "The Council may underestimate us, but they're excellent hosts." The ship's intercom crackled to life with the voice of Captain Vril, the Arcanian commander. "All passengers, prepare for unexpected exit from hyperspace. Standard procedure, no cause for alarm." The Marines exchanged glances as the familiar hum of the engines changed pitch. Walker's expression darkened. "Standard procedure," he muttered. "Not at this point in our journey." The ship lurched violently as it dropped out of hyperspace. Emergency lights flashed on as the main power fluctuated. "All hands, battle stations." Captain Vril's voice now carried unmistakable tension. "Unknown vessels approaching with hostile intent. Council security personnel to defense positions." Walker was already moving. "Marines, gear up. Full combat load." The 6 Marines rushed to their quarters where their equipment was stored. Within minutes, they had donned lightweight armor vests under their uniforms and retrieved their weapons cases. Ambassador Reed appeared in the corridor. "Admiral, what's happening?" "Likely pirates or raiders," Walker replied calmly, checking the charge on a compact pistol. "The Celestial Harmony is valuable, both for technology and now for diplomatic hostages." The ship rocked as something struck the hull. The lights flickered and died before emergency systems engage. "Ambassador, please remain in your cabin," Walker instructed. "We'll handle this." Through the viewport, they could see 3 predatory-looking ships surrounding them. Their design was unfamiliar, jagged, asymmetrical craft bristling with weapon ports. "Krell Raiders," explained a Council security officer who joined them in the corridor. His energy rifle hummed as it powered up. "They attack Council ships when they can catch them isolated." Another blast hit the ship, stronger this time. The artificial gravity wavered momentarily. "Our shields are failing," the security officer said, checking a wrist device. "They're using shield disruptor technology." Walker's expression remained calm. "How many security personnel aboard?" 8, including myself." The officer looked nervously at the human weapons. "Those won't help much. Krell wear personal shield generators." Walker nodded. "So we've been told." The ship's communication system crackled with an alien voice, harsh and guttural even through the translator. "Council vessel, your shields are disabled. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in hull breaches." With a shudder, the Celestial Harmony went completely dark. Only emergency lighting remained. "They've knocked out our main power," the Council officer whispered. A loud clang echoed through the hull, the unmistakable sound of a boarding tube attaching. "They'll come through the starboard docking port," the Council officer said, raising his energy rifle. 4 more security personnel joined him, all holding similar weapons. Walker turned to his Marines. "Defensive positions. You are authorized for full combat response." The Marines moved with practiced precision, taking cover in the corridor leading from the docking port. Their movements were calm and methodical as they readied their weapons. The Council security officer stared at them. "Admiral, those projectile weapons." A tremendous boom cut him off as the docking port was forced open. Moments later, 6 hulking figures stormed through. They were massive, easily 7 feet tall, with gray armored skin and multiple eyes. Each carried an energy weapon that pulsed with deadly light. "Council vessel captured," the lead Krell bellowed. "Surrender and..." The Council security officers opened fire, their energy weapons sending brilliant beams toward the Krell. The beam struck the raiders' personal shields, dissipating in flashes of light without effect. The Krell laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal, and returned fire. One council officer fell immediately, a smoking hole in his chest. "Your weapons are calibrated incorrectly," a Krell growled. "Surrender now." Walker looked at Lieutenant Parker and nodded once. "Marines," Parker commanded quietly. "Weapons free." The sound that followed was nothing like the whine of energy weapons. Instead, a sharp, staccato cracking echoed through the corridor as the Marines opened fire with their primitive projectile weapons. The Krell leader's multiple eyes widened in shock as the first bullet struck his personal shield, and then passed straight through it. Dark fluid sprayed from his torso as 3 rounds tore into his armored hide. He staggered backward, mandibles clicking in confusion more than pain. "Impossible," he gurgled before collapsing. The remaining Krell froze momentarily, their confidence shattered by the sight of their fallen leader. That hesitation proved fatal. The Marines fired another coordinated volley, and 3 more raiders dropped to the deck, their shields offering no protection against the human bullets. Captain Lisa Reeves stepped forward, her rifle trained on the remaining Krell. "Drop your weapons," she commanded. The 2 surviving raiders looked at each other, then at their fallen comrades. Slowly, they placed their energy weapons on the floor. The council security officer stared at the scene, his mouth hanging open. "How?" he whispered. "They're shields." Walker smiled grimly. "Kinetic penetrators, specially designed to pass through energy barriers." More Krell were pushing through the boarding tube, unaware of what had happened to the first wave. Reeves signaled her team to take defensive positions. "Second wave incoming," she reported calmly. "At least 8 hostiles." The council officer raised his weapon, but Walker placed a hand on his arm. "Your energy weapon won't penetrate their shields. Let us handle this." The officer lowered his rifle, watching as the Marines took aim. The new group of Krell raiders stormed through the hatchway, only to meet the same fate as the first. The Marines' fire was precise and devastating. Bullets tore through energy shields as if they weren't there, finding weak spots in the Krell's natural armor. 3 raiders fell immediately. The others scrambled for cover, firing wildly with their energy weapons. The beams scorched the corridor walls but missed the well-positioned Marines. "They're retreating," one of the council officers shouted as the remaining Krell began backing toward the boarding tube. Reeves advanced steadily, her team moving in practiced formation. "Cover the exit," she ordered. "Don't let them seal the tube." 2 Marines flanked the hatchway while Reeves and another moved directly toward it. The Krell fired desperately, their shots going wide as panic set in. Reeves calmly raised her rifle and fired twice. The last Krell raider standing clutched at his chest and collapsed across the threshold of the boarding tube. "Clear," Reeves called after checking the boarding tube. "They're falling back to their ship." Through the tube, they could see Krell raiders dragging wounded comrades, retreating in disarray. Moments later, a heavy door slammed shut on the Krell vessel's side. With a metallic groan, the boarding tube detached from the celestial harmony. Through the viewport, they watched the 3 Krell ships rapidly accelerate away, abandoning their attack. The ship's lights flickered and then came back to full power as emergency systems restored functionality. Ambassador Reed approached, surveying the aftermath. "Is everyone all right?" 2 council security officers wounded, Walker reported. "Our team is unharmed." The lead council officer was examining one of the human rifles with newfound respect. "This technology," he began, then seemed at a loss for words. Reeves ejected a spent magazine and calmly inserted a fresh one. "Standard infantry loadout. Nothing special." "But how did they penetrate the shields?" the officer asked, looking from the rifle to the dead Krell raiders. Walker picked up a fallen bullet casing from the deck. "The frequency and energy signature of council shields has been known to us since first contact. We designed these rounds specifically to phase through that type of barrier." "That's impossible," the officer insisted. Our shields stop all physical objects. Clearly not all, Reed said, gesturing to the fallen Krell. The council ship's Captain Vril arrived, taking in the scene with all four of his eyes. "You saved my ship," he said slowly to Walker, "with projectile weapons." Walker nodded. "Sometimes old technology solves new problems. The council must be informed," Vril said, his voice trembling slightly. "If Krell raiders have somehow obtained shield technology, and your weapons can defeat those shields." Reeves finished securing the corridor before addressing her team. "Maintain defensive positions until we're certain the threat is gone. Parker, Williams, secure the boarding point." The Marines moved with quiet efficiency, checking their weapons and establishing a perimeter. The council security officer watched them, his earlier disdain replaced with cautious respect. "Perhaps," he said quietly to Walker, "the military advisor's assessment of human capabilities was premature." Walker simply nodded, his attention already turning to their next potential challenge. The emergency council chamber buzzed with agitated voices. Representatives from all 17 member species had gathered within hours of the Celestial Harmony's return to Nexus Prime. The attack by Krell raiders was concerning enough, but rumors about how the humans had defended the ship spread even faster than the official report. Military Advisor Dorn paced the center of the circular room, all four arms gesticulating as he spoke. His exoskeleton clicked with each agitated step. "This is completely impossible," he insisted, facing Admiral Walker and Ambassador Reed. "No physical projectile can penetrate energy shields. The physics simply doesn't allow it." Walker stood calmly, hands clasped behind his back. "And yet that's exactly what happened." High Counselor Rix raised a slender hand for silence. "We have testimony from Captain Vril and his security team. The human weapons were effective against shielded Krell raiders." "There must be another explanation," Dorn persisted. "Perhaps the Krell shields were malfunctioning." Captain Reeves stepped forward, carrying a sealed case. "With your permission," she said, nodding to Walker. At his approval, she placed the case on the central table and opened it, revealing one of the rifles used during the attack. "This is a standard M27 combat rifle," she explained. "What makes it special isn't the weapon itself, but the ammunition." She held up a bullet for the council to see. It gleamed strangely under the chamber lights, its surface unlike any metal the council members had seen. "The outer casing is composed of a composite material that resonates at the exact frequency of standard council shield technology," Reed explained. "When fired, it creates a momentary phase shift in the shield matrix, allowing the projectile to pass through." Dorn snatched the bullet from Reeves' hand, examining it closely with all four eyes. "This is highly advanced materials science," he admitted reluctantly. "We call it shield phasing technology," Walker said. "Developed after our scientists analyzed the energy patterns of your shield systems during first contact." A murmur rippled through the chamber as council members processed this information. "You designed weapons specifically to defeat our defensive technology?" asked a jellyfish-like council member, their translucent body pulsing with alarm. Reed raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. "We designed defensive capabilities to protect ourselves in a galaxy where energy shields are standard. It would be irresponsible not to." "Show us," Dorn demanded suddenly. Walker raised an eyebrow. "Pardon." "Show us these weapons in action," Dorn clarified. "If what you claim is true, I want to see it demonstrated under controlled conditions." High Counselor Rix considered this, then nodded. "A reasonable request." 1 hour later, they gathered in the station's military testing facility. A standard council shield generator had been set up at one end of the range, protecting a target dummy. Dorn personally checked the shield generator, confirming it was functioning at full capacity. "This is the same technology used throughout council space," he announced. "No physical object should penetrate it." Walker nodded to Reeves, who stepped up to the firing line with her rifle. The council members watched intently as she took aim and fired 3 shots in rapid succession. The bullets passed through the shimmering shield as if it wasn't there, striking the target dead center. Gasps echoed around the room. Dorn's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. "Impossible," he whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. Walker placed another weapon on the testing bench. "We've developed various applications of this technology," he explained, indicating a larger rifle. "This model is designed to penetrate multiple shield layers." "And this," Reed added, revealing a small device, "is a shield disruptor that can temporarily disable Council standard shields within a 10-meter radius." The Council members exchanged worried glances. "Why didn't you share this technology when you joined the Council?" asked a reptilian representative. Walker smiled thinly. "We attempted to discuss our defensive capabilities, but were told they were primitive and obsolete." High Counselor Rix stepped forward, examining the weapons with new respect. "It seems we made assumptions based on appearance rather than function." "A common mistake," Reed said diplomatically. Dorn touched the bullet holes in the target dummy, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine concern. "If humans can bypass shields this easily..." The Krell Raiders had Council shield technology. Where did they get it? More importantly, Walker added quietly, "What happens when they realize their shields are no longer effective?" The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The emergency alert blared through Nexus Prime's communication systems, its urgent tone cutting through the usual busy hum of the station. Council representatives rushed to the Grand Chamber, faces grim and movements hurried. High Counselor Rix stood at the center platform, looking more troubled than any human had ever seen an Arcanian appear. "We have confirmed reports of major Krell attacks on 3 Council worlds," Rix announced as the chamber filled. "Verith Prime, New Centauri, and Doral IV are all under heavy assault." Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing the besieged planets. The images were chaotic. Krell warships dropping from orbit, ground forces overwhelming defense positions, and civilian structures burning. "The Krell have never attempted such a coordinated attack," Dorn stated, his earlier confidence completely vanished. "This is unprecedented." "What about Council defense fleets?" asked Ambassador Reed. A reptilian council member, Admiral Thex of the Unified Defense Force, stepped forward. "Our ships are engaging the enemy, but..." He paused, mandibles twitching with distress. "The Krell have somehow adapted their weapons. They're bypassing our shields." The chamber erupted in panicked voices until Rix raised all 4 hands for silence. "The Krell appear to have developed their own version of phase shift technology," Thex continued. "Our ships are taking heavy damage. Ground forces report similar issues with personal shields." All eyes turned to the human delegation. Walker stood, his face grave. "The Krell must have been working on this technology before they encountered us. Our engagement likely just confirmed what they suspected, that shields have vulnerabilities." "Can you help?" Rix asked directly, setting aside all diplomatic pretense. "Your weapons work against them." Reed and Walker exchanged glances. "Earth has a rapid response force prepared for emergencies," Walker said. 3 ships with marine contingents could be here within 48 hours. They're equipped with the shield-phasing weapons." "That's not enough against a Krell armada," Dorn objected. "No," Walker agreed, "but they could help stabilize the defense of Doral IV while you reorganize your fleet. And we can share our shield-phasing technology with your engineers." Rix didn't hesitate. "Done. Ambassador Reed, we formally request Earth's military assistance." Reed nodded. "We'll send the call immediately." 46 hours later, 3 human battlecruisers dropped out of hyperspace near Doral IV. They were not as large or elegant as Council vessels, their hulls bearing the practical, angular design that humans preferred. Each carried 200 Marines equipped with shield-phasing weapons. From the bridge of the lead ship, the EDF Indomitable, Walker observed the battle unfolding around the blue-green planet. Council ships were fighting desperately, their graceful forms maneuvering to avoid Krell fire rather than relying on their now vulnerable shields. "Status report," Walker ordered. Krell forces have established control of the northern continent, his tactical officer reported. Council ground forces are holding the capital city but are surrounded. Civilian casualties are high. Walker's jaw tightened. Deploy the Marines. Priority is civilian evacuation and securing a perimeter around the capital. The human dropships launched toward the surface, weaving through the ongoing space battle. As they entered the atmosphere, they could see the capital city's silver spires now blackened by smoke. Krell forces had established a siege line around the city, their artillery pounding against the failing shields. Captain Reeves led the first wave of Marines to the ground, establishing a landing zone in what had been a public park. Council soldiers stared in amazement as the humans deployed with their primitive weapons. "We need to break that siege line," Reeves told the Council commander, a tall Thracian whose crystalline skin reflected the fires burning nearby. "Impossible," the Thracian said. "Their shields protect them from our weapons, and they've positioned artillery to cover all approaches." Reeves smiled grimly. "Watch us." The human Marines moved out in combat formation, advancing toward the Krell positions. When the first Krell troops spotted them, they responded with contemptuous ease, standing in the open behind their energy shields. That confidence lasted exactly 30 seconds. The crack of human rifles echoed across the battlefield as Marines opened fire. Krell soldiers fell by the dozens, their shields offering no protection. Confusion spread through their ranks as more troops fell. By nightfall, the siege was broken. Human and Council forces had established a secure perimeter around the capital and begun evacuating civilians. In orbit, the human battlecruisers had joined the Council fleet, their kinetic weapons tearing through Krell ships that had grown too dependent on shield technology. Walker received the news on the Indomitable's bridge. "The Krell are retreating from Doral IV," he announced to the crew. Similar reports coming in from New Centauri. A message from High Counselor Rix appeared on his screen. "The Council owes humanity a debt. Perhaps there is wisdom in old ways after all." The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so crowded. Representatives from all 17 member species packed the tiered seating, with additional observers standing along the walls. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Reed and Admiral Walker, their posture formal but relaxed. High Counselor Rix raised all four hands for silence, and the chamber gradually quieted. 3 weeks ago, Rix began, voice resonating through the vast space. "The Council faced the most coordinated Krell attack in our history. 3 worlds under siege. Our fleet's struggling. Our defenses failing." The Counselor paused, looking directly at the human delegation. "Today, all 3 worlds are secure. The Krell fleet has retreated beyond our borders." Applause erupted from the gathered representatives. Even the most skeptical council members joined in. "We owe this victory to our newest allies," Rix continued when the noise subsided. "The humans of Earth not only came to our aid, but shared technology that saved countless lives." Military Advisor Dorn stepped forward, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine respect. "The Defense Committee has reviewed the battle data. Human forces accounted for 63% of Krell casualties, despite representing less than 8% of our combined military presence." Murmurs of amazement rippled through the chamber. "Therefore," Rix announced, "by unanimous vote of the Council, Earth is granted full member status, effective immediately." A new banner unfurled from the ceiling, joining the 17 others, the blue and green flag of Earth, now recognized as an equal. Reed bowed slightly. "We are honored, High Counselor." "There is more," Rix continued. "The Council has created a new position on the Defense Committee, focusing on tactical innovation and technological countermeasures. Admiral Walker, we ask that you accept this role." Walker stepped forward. "I would be proud to serve." After the ceremony, Council representatives gathered around tables laden with food and drink from all member worlds. The humans found themselves the center of attention, no longer viewed with condescension, but with keen interest. In one corner, Captain Reeves demonstrated the disassembly of a standard rifle to a group of fascinated military officers. "The principle is simple," she explained, removing the firing mechanism. "Kinetic energy delivered precisely is often more effective than distributed energy weapons." A Thracian commander leaned closer. "But the recoil, how do you manage it?" Reeves smiled. "We train for it. The push becomes part of your rhythm." Across the room, Walker found himself joined by Dorn, who had been unusually quiet during the ceremony. "I owe you an apology, Admiral," Dorn said, his mandibles moving in what humans now recognize as embarrassment. "I dismissed your weapons as primitive without understanding their purpose." Walker nodded. "An understandable assumption. Energy weapons are impressive and versatile. But vulnerable," Dorn added. "We grew so dependent on shield technology that we stopped considering alternatives." He gestured to a holographic display showing new Council ship designs, now featuring both energy shields and physical armor. "We're already implementing hybrid defense systems based on your models. Adaptation is the key to survival," Walker said, "something humans have always understood." Near the main entrance, Reed was speaking with High Counselor Rix and several elder council members. "The Krell have gone unusually quiet," Rix noted. "Our intelligence suggests they're struggling to understand how their advantage disappeared so quickly." "They'll be back," Reed said. "But we'll be ready." An elderly council member with translucent skin that revealed pulsing organs beneath leaned heavily on a staff. "I have served on this council for over 200 cycles," he said, his voice creaking like old wood. "In that time, I've seen many new species join our ranks. Few have changed our thinking so profoundly in so short a time." He raised a glass filled with shimmering liquid. "To the humans who reminded us of an ancient wisdom. Never discard the old ways until you fully understand why they were created." Reed accepted the toast with a smile. "And to the Council, for being wise enough to listen." As the celebration continued, a young Arcanian approached Walker with a small case. Inside was a perfectly crafted model of an Earth rifle, rendered in precious metals. "My father commands the defense fleet at Doral IV," she explained. "He asked me to give you this. He says it will remind us all that appearances can deceive, and that wisdom comes in many forms." Walker accepted the gift with a nod. "Tell him I'm honored." Across the chamber, humans and aliens mingled freely, exchanging stories and ideas. The galaxy had changed. Old assumptions had fallen away, replaced by newfound respect between species who had once seemed worlds apart. And on a display table near the center of the room, surrounded by curious onlookers, lay a simple Earth rifle, no longer an object of ridicule, but a symbol of the unexpected wisdom that had saved the Galactic Council.